Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. We have a lot to get to. Round two in the NBA and in the NHL both kick off right now or over the weekend. In the NBA's case, with one game between the Pacers and the Cavs taking place, we'll go over predictions for round two to the rest of the playoffs, talk about where we went wrong and what really happened in the first round. We'll also talk about all the game sevens. We had two game sevens in the NBA. We had two game sevens in the NHL. We'll talk about both of them, how they went down, as well as anything else that happens around the world as we are live today in this set. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, May 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our first segment here, which is what's going on in the Eastern Conference. We, of course, saw Game 1 between the Pacers and the Cavs, and this series is going to be amazing. This is one of those series that I think is going to be a little bit underrated by a lot of people, but this series is going to be just so much fun to watch as we take a look at what these two teams bring to the table. Of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the number one overall seed in this conference, dominated all year long, but don't sleep on the Pacers. Since the start of the year, the calendar year, January 1st, they were the fourth best team by record in the entire NBA. This is a Pacers team that is hot at the right time, and more importantly, is built very much like this Cavs team. When you look at these two teams, in my mind, they're basically the same. And I don't just say that because they're both Midwest teams, Cleveland and Indiana. They're pretty close to each other, but I say that because when you look at the players on this team and the play style of both of these teams, they're basically the same. These are both teams that run incredibly deep. Obviously, with the Cavs, you have a little bit more high-profile star power with guys like Garland when he comes back. He was almost there for Game 1, should be there for Game 2. Donovan Mitchell, the big one. Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, the big four over there. But you also have guys coming off the bench like DeAndre Hunter, like Ty Jerome. These guys that have stepped up huge for them throughout the season. Ty Jerome has been playing huge minutes all playoffs long as well. That is six guys right there, not to mention the other guys that step up on this roster, because there's any number of them down to like 8 or 9 that can step up on any given night for the Cavs. It's the same way for the Pacers, right? You, of course, have Tyrese Halliburton, who's going to be the facilitator of the basketball. You got Andrew Nembhard, who stepped up huge last night for them off the bench. Mathurin is going to play some big minutes for them. TJ McConnell off the bench. Of course, you have your stars in Turner and Siakam as well. You also have Obi Toppin, who I'm a huge fan of. You can keep going, right? That's 7 guys, 6 guys that I just listed on both of these teams that are going to have to come in and play big minutes for their squads. This is going to be a very, very high octane series. Both of these offenses are some of the best, most aggressive, and more importantly, fastest offenses in the NBA. These two defenses also play a very similar style. They're not going to match up well against each other, so we're going to see scores like we saw where the Pacers went out there and, yes, they went out and dominated Game 1, but that was without Darius Garland. They steal home court 1-0. This is going to be not an easy series by any stretch of the imaginations for the Pacers to finish out or for the Cavs to win. I know that the Cavs, of course, coming in as favorites as they should be because of how they played under Coach of the Year Kenny Atkinson, but this is a team that I think really is going to hang on what does Darius Garland look like. We saw what a game without Darius Garland looked like, and the Cavs just did not have it in them. They had a couple of runs where they were able to tie it, but every time they got close, the Pacers went a run of their own to take the lead back, right? And at the end of the game, it was just too much. They had a huge game from Andrew Nembhard, like we talked about as well, but this is something that the Pacers are going to be able to do night in and night out. Donovan Mitchell extended his record now stands alone at the top for most consecutive game ones with 30-plus points with 8 of them. But it came on a night where he wasn't necessarily inefficient, but the normal ball sharing kind of everybody gets their touches in style of the Cavs wasn't there because Donovan Mitchell was having to take control of the game, and he couldn't hit a three. Most of his points came in from the inside, where he was able to basically cut to the lane without any kind of issue, which is fine. Take what they're giving you, right? You need those points however you can get it. But I would like to see some of those other guys get a little more involved, some more Evan Mobley, some more Jarrett Allen, definitely more Darius Garland when and if he does come back in this series. I know he was close to coming back for game one. Instead, most likely coming back for game two. But if he's not at 100%, the speed of this Pacers team is going to be tough. You talk about a team that has so much motor. That is the Pacers, right? Of course, they are based in Indy, the Speedway over there. They've just got so much motor. They go all game long. 48 minutes of just go, go, go basketball. And the reason they can do that is because they have that depth that I talked about, right? I went through and I listed 8 players off the top of my head for that Pacers team, right? This is a Pacers team that is just going to outpace you in their game, right? This is something that they do. It's also what the Cavs do. So we're going to see some high scoring action. We're going to see some games that go down to the wire, some real back and forth ones. But at the end of the day, this Cavs team is just super special. I love what they've been able to do. This by no means is going to be an easy series, and I know they've already lost game one, but I'm taking the Cavs in 7 games in this one to defeat the Indiana Pacers, stopping them from getting to the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row. On the other side of the Eastern Conference, there is another series that I think is a little less interesting than that first one, but I still think has a lot of intrigue. Of course, Boston versus New York is always going to have intrigue. These two giant markets that have historic rivalries in other sports. These two teams don't necessarily have the same hatred for each other, the Knicks and the Celtics, but it's not like there isn't any animosity between New York and Boston. The Knicks made conscious efforts this offseason to be the Celtics stopper, right? They went out and they got Mikal Bridges, right? They traded for Cat. They went out and they made this small ball lineup. They brought in OG Anunoby last season. They pushed Mitchell Robinson out of the starting lineup. This is something that we'll see how it works. It hasn't necessarily worked too well over the course of the regular season. They've lost all 4 of the games to the Boston Celtics, and really that's the big talking point heading into this one. The Knicks have really struggled against the top teams in the NBA. They just had a very, very hard-fought 6-game series against the Detroit Pistons in the last matchup. That one only goes 6, but that was body blow after body blow after body blow. The last 4 games all ended within 3 points of each other. Of course, the Knicks ended taking up 3 of those 4 games, which is huge for them to take. Half of those games, which is huge for them to take, ending that series down the stretch. But this is something that the Knicks need to be able to deal with. The physicality of that Pistons series, it's just going to be different. And that's not to say that this Celtics team isn't physical, but they're not as physical as that Pistons team is. So it's going to be different. They're going to be able to have their guys get to the spot, but the question is, can they even stop the Celtics? The Celtics have been on a tear. They're getting Drew Holiday back. It sounds like they're going to be fully healthy for the first time in a while. It feels like they haven't really hit their full potential yet. And we're in round 2 of the playoffs. We were talking like this about the Celtics last season because this team is just stacked, right? You talk about a team with Brown and Tatum, who's reached a whole nother level this postseason, by the way, kind of shoved away because they were playing on the NBA TV series against the Magic. But still, he's been incredible all postseason long, even dealing with that injury. You've got Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday coming back. You've got Peyton Pritchard, who stepped up huge for them in that 6th Man of the Year voting. This is going to be a really tough Celtics team to take care of, but that's not to say that the Knicks don't stand a chance. I know that they're not really the most versatile defenders, and if you get them in a switch, you go into that drop coverage that the Knicks like to do with Cat all the time, they're going to get into trouble where they're either going to shoot the 3 in your face or they're going to drive past you when you step up, which puts them in a tough spot. They've got to be able to keep up with them offensively, which they have not been able to do all season long. That's not to say they can't. right? We've seen teams, the Wolves last year, swept a series against the Suns, even though they lost 4-0 in this regular season series. Not that I think it's going to happen, but I do think New York in the playoffs steps up their intensity and they take at least a game or two. I'm taking the Celtics in 6 in this one, but it definitely is going to be not as tight as that Cavs Pacers series. That one I am super excited for. Cannot wait to see how these series go, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think the two battles in the East go? Who do you think comes out of Indiana and Cleveland, and what about Boston, New York? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the West Coast. There are 2 really good matchups over there we'll talk about, preview them, who I've got winning and how many games. That's coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. In this segment, we are going to turn our attention to the Western Conference playoffs. If you're just tuning in, we just went over everything for the Eastern Conference playoffs round 2 of the NBA. We'll talk about all of the matchups, including a couple really good ones between the Nuggets and Thunder and the Warriors and Timberwolves coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, May 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Western Conference playoffs in the NBA. There's a couple of good matchups, of course, 2 of them here. You expect the top 8 teams all to be pretty good, but we got some solid matchups. There's some good storylines in the Nuggets and the Thunder, and it's a really coin toss of a series between the Warriors and the Timberwolves, I think. We'll start off in OKC. The Nuggets, led by Jokic, take on the Thunder, led by Shea. And that's the first storyline we take a look at, right? Shea versus Jokic, the MVP frontrunners this year. It's basically all but been decided, I believe, that Shea is going to win the MVP. Even so, these 2 teams meet up. We've seen it go both ways in the past. In the regular season series, there was a couple of back-to-back games in OKC. One went to the Thunder, one went to the Nuggets in this one. This one should be a lot of fun to see. It's not necessarily going to decide who gets the MVP, but it sure is going to be a kind of indicator for who wins the People's MVP this year. Now, I do think that another story that I think might be even bigger is the Russell Westbrook story. Russell Westbrook, of course, returning to the Oklahoma City Thunder, or at least playing in that building in a playoff series for the first time since he left. Russell Westbrook, a OKC legend, of course. He's most likely going to have his number 0 retired when he is done playing basketball. And he's going to be remembered as a member of the Thunder on those teams with KD, those teams with Harden. His first team that's where he won his MVP, averaged his triple doubles. That's where he made his big mark in the league, is in OKC. He returns there. I'm curious how the reception is going to be. He didn't necessarily leave in the most hate-filled way with the fans, kind of like KD did, but it's definitely something to watch. These two teams have a lot of connections to each other. Westbrook won, Shea versus Jokic here. But I think the real battle is going to be, how do they stop Jokic? We've seen them do their best against him. You've got Hartenstein down there that can be a big body like Ivica Zubac was in the first round of the playoffs for them. You also have Chet, who not necessarily is going to be a stopgap against them, but he's going to be a tough guard for them. This is a Nuggets team that stepped up huge with their depth in Game 7, but outside of that, there wasn't too much that you look at from their last series and you say, this is going to translate to the Thunder. The Thunder, of course, absolutely dismantled the Grizzlies in 4 games. One of the biggest wins in the history of the playoffs. They had the biggest biggest halftime comeback, I should say, in the history of the playoffs. Shea played not his best basketball, but he started to turn it on down the stretch. Chet was playing really good basketball for them. J-Dub playing good basketball. Their defense is kind of going to be the key in this one. How is that defense going to play against a Jokic-led basketball team? Is Jamal Murray going to be able to step up again? What about Westbrook? He played really good basketball in Game 6 and in Game 5 and in Game 7, the ones that the Nuggets won pretty big against the Clippers in. How are they going to react to that? How is that going to go? I think the Thunder dominate this. I really do. As good as Jokic is, this is a Thunder team that was the best in the NBA for a reason. They're a young core. They're going to be able to deal with this Nuggets team just a little bit better than I think Harden and Kawhi could. Their defense is just way too much. We saw turnovers galore by the Nuggets in that round 1 series. They're going from a good defense, a defense that was still top 10 in the NBA, to arguably the best defense in the NBA. It's just going to be a huge transition for them. I think they're really going to struggle, and I think they're just playing a little bit too sloppy. I think they're good enough to take a game or two. Jokic can do that, but I'm taking the Thunder in 5 in this one. I just don't think it's necessarily that close. The other series I truly think is a toss-up. The Warriors versus the Timberwolves. Of course, the Warriors move on after a Game 7 against the Rockets, where they get the Buddy Hield game, 33 points in that one from Buddy. But they've also been the league's best defense since Jimmy Butler joined that squad. The Timberwolves, on the other hand, they take care of business against a Lakers team that most people, including myself, had them losing to. Anthony Edwards showed up huge in these playoffs. He outdueled Luka in a couple of those games. Of course, Rudy Gobert played a huge part defensively all series long, but also in Game 5, the closeout game, he was just everything that they needed and more. Now, it's not going to be the same because the Warriors, they have a center. It's not going to be as easy as it was against the Lakers to get inside. But the Warriors also have a different kind of experience than the Timberwolves, than the Lakers do, right? Luka has his experience, LeBron has his experience, but overall, this Warriors team is just vet Hall of Famer after another, right? This is the end of an era for them. I know Anthony Edwards has said that he wanted to play against Draymond Green in a series, so he's probably excited to do it, but this is not necessarily the greatest matchup for either of these two teams. We've seen these teams match up really close against each other in the regular season. The most recent game was a Warriors 1-point victory against the Timberwolves. The Warriors have a 3-1 lead in the season series so far when it comes to their matchups in the regular season. Of course, a lot of that has to be taken with context of some of that was without Jimmy Butler. They're still doing that even without him, but he is a huge addition here. Because as good as Julius Randle played, he's going to have to go up against someone that can put up a challenge down low on the inside for him in Draymond Green, who was in that Defensive Player of the Year voting. This is a Warriors team that the sky is honestly the limit for them. They have zero pressure on them to get anything done. This is just get as far as you possibly can with Steph and Jimmy, and if it doesn't work out, well, you have a short enough timetable and you've already accomplished enough that it's not a huge deal if it doesn't work out. For the Timberwolves, this series means a lot. This could be a passing of the torch kind of series. We've talked about it in the past. Last year was kind of a passing of the torch playoffs. But if with the Warriors left, outside of them, there aren't really any of those old-headed teams remaining, right? Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, those guys are still around, but Jokic is probably is part of that new era, right? You've got Jokic, you've got Shea, you've got Ant, you've got Jalen Brunson, you've got Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, you've got Tyrese Halliburton and Donovan Mitchell in these playoffs now as the face of these teams. This is a new era of playoffs teams right now that we're seeing get this far in the playoffs, which is completely fine, completely normal, as it's supposed to go. But the Thunder and the Nuggets, but what the Warriors and the Timberwolves also have is they've just played these two games they played all of their season games incredibly close with one another. These two teams, I think, are going to have a lot of ferocity for each other when they go against each other in these playoffs. I think this is a Warriors team that, as long as Steph Curry is playing good basketball, you still have playoff Jimmy. I think they're a team that, if the Rockets didn't take him out, they could go pretty far, which is just a factor of Steph right there. As good as Anthony Edwards is, I don't think his supporting cast is really as good as it was last year, so I don't think they'll go as far as they did, and I think running into the Warriors is a tough one. I'm taking the Warriors in 7, even though the Warriors just played a tough series and that might have tired them out a bit. Feel like the energy and momentum they got, despite the Timberwolves also getting that momentum from taking out the Lakers, it's going to be a real toss-up here. I'm going with the Warriors in 7, though, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, because truly I could see it going either way in this one. What do you think happens in the Western Conference? What do you think happens between the Warriors, Timberwolves, and Nuggets and Thunder? I'd love to hear what you think. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the Game 7s that took place over the weekend in the NBA, as well as taking a look at the games going on currently in the NBA, the start of round 1. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, May 5th, if you were just tuning in. We just finished going over all of the NBA second round predictions for the West as well as the East. In this segment, we turn our attention over to the Game 7s that took place in the NBA. There were two of them, and they didn't really go the way that a lot of people were expecting, at least in terms of entertainment value. These two games were not as close as a lot of people were hoping, but we'll talk about them anyway. The Clippers get absolutely destroyed, and the Rockets just don't have the offense to keep up with Buddy Hield and the Warriors. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, May 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Game 7s in the NBA. We'll start off with the one that took place a little earlier. The Clippers get absolutely blown out by the Denver Nuggets in Game 7, a series that had so much ups and downs and so many close games, overtimes, you name it. Everything you want in a playoff series was in that, but at the end of the day, the James Harden playoff curse stepped up huge. That is something that everyone was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in that one. I thought it wasn't going to happen in this year's playoffs. I'm not going to lie. I thought the way that he had played in the regular season, having Kawhi as a number one option as opposed to him, would be a way for them to avoid that situation. But when you put up just 7 points in a Game 7, when you were the number 2 scoring option, or maybe even the number 1 scoring option on that team, when you get production from the entire bench, when Jokic only puts up 16 points and the Nuggets just still decide to shoot lights out all across the board, it's just not a good draw. When you get a bad Jokic game and you still can't win, it's a shame. And I'm not going to point the finger at just James Harden. There's a lot of things that went wrong. Zubac played really good basketball, but the rest of that team wasn't really the most efficient when it came to that Game 7. Of course, James Harden was a big problem, but he wasn't the only issue in that one. Jokic and that team just kind of overpowered them. Aaron Gordon stepped up huge in that Game 7. You saw Russell Westbrook step up huge. Of course, he had that technical at the end when they were up by 20, kind of celebrating in the face of a hard-fought series, no doubt about that. We saw tensions flare between some of these guys earlier on in the series. Jamal Murray picked up a dude earlier on in that series, but that was exactly what you wanted in an NBA series. Not everything is going to end with a bang, but still having that performance, that exclamation mark of an end to a series like that shows that the Nuggets are ready. They're going to bring the fight to the Thunder, not necessarily, going to be the most successful at it, I don't think. But still, they go out there and they ride that momentum that they got from the hot shooting night, from the way that they played defensively, the way that they were able to shut down that Clippers team, a Clippers team that they had not really been able to shut down all too much. That's exactly what they needed to see. Jokic played really good defense all series long, and in Game 7, of course, that stepped up as well. He averaged nearly 2.5 steals per game, which is crazy to me. But the other Game 7, it also wasn't that great in the NBA, if I'm being completely honest. You have two teams that couldn't really shoot the basketball very well. The Rockets, of course, just could not score. They needed their guys to step up. They needed Jalen Green to have a big game. They needed Alperen Sengun to have a huge game in that one. But they just couldn't get anything to fall. Sengun just could not get anything to roll his way in that game, and it kind of killed them. He has been their main offensive weapon going one-on-one against the big guys, either Draymond Green or Kevon Looney, whoever was down there, and he got to his spot. Give him his credit. He got to his spots, but he wasn't making it. 9 for 23, finished with 21 points. That stat line on its own looks fine, but there were also stretches where the Warriors couldn't score the basketball, but it didn't make a difference because in a 4-minute stretch when they were down by 10 points, The Rockets scored 2 points while the Warriors scored none. That was the opportunity to come back in the game. Their defense was amazing all series long. They were able to shut down Steph Curry mostly until late in the second half. They were able to shut down a lot of those guys. Draymond Green took 14 jump shots in that one. That's exactly the game plan that the Rockets wanted. But then you ran into the Buddy Hield game. Buddy Hield with 33 points. He made 9 3-pointers in that one. He went off. And Buddy Hield is a guy that, if you catch him on the right night, could be one of the best shooters on the planet, but he's not necessarily that guy ever, right? He's a guy that's very much inconsistent. We saw that in Game 6 where he struggled. He didn't score until the fourth quarter. We saw that earlier on in the series where if he's stepping up big, obviously you have a lot of guys that can shoot the lights out of the ball with him and Steph Curry on the court. But he's also not a guy that you're going to consistently rely on to do that. Gary Payton was not in the game, so they needed him to go. Gary Payton, the second, dealing with an illness, left him out of the lineup. Buddy Hield stepped up. He really did. He hits that near half-court shot at the end of the first quarter, and he just never really looked back from there. Finishes with 33 points, a couple of exclamation mark threes. He hit the shot that led to Steph Curry doing the sleeper on the Rockets, but the Rockets really doomed themselves in this one. This was a series of, can these young guys step up in the playoffs despite not really having a type of scorer that you'd usually rely on? And they weren't really able to do that. Their defense played amazing. You had one great Jalen Green game in Game 2. Fred VanVleet got really hot shooting the basketball in Game 5 and Game 6 to keep them alive, but nothing showed up in Game 7. Şengün was a little disappointing. He showed up in Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, but then he kind of fizzled out down the stretch in Games 4, 5, 6, and 7, where especially in Game 7, him being unable to consistently make those shots when he gets to his spot, even on one-on-one coverage, good coverage, it's the kind of stuff he's dealt with all season long. He should be making those shots. He should be making those little hook shots, those little floaters. Instead, he's shooting 9 for 23. Dylan Brooks shooting 3 for 9. This was just not the night that they needed, especially at home against the Warriors. They had a real chance to make something happen. Instead, they're unable to shoot the basketball. They just need a true scorer. There's lots of guys out there on the market for the Rockets to go get, right? They could potentially make a trade for one of the stars the Celtics might be moving off of because of how expensive that roster is. They could potentially make a trade for Giannis if he truly is available. It'd be really interesting to see who they gave up out of that young core for that move. But there are a lot of options for them this offseason. Maybe they make a trade for KD or Devin Booker from the Suns to get a true number one scoring threat. There's a lot of things that they need to do, but the number one thing is get someone to score the basketball. Get a guy that you can turn to on any given possession and say, hey, we need one bad. Go be that guy. Go get us a basket. If they had that, this series is going towards Houston, and we're seeing Houston advance as opposed to Golden State. Instead, they didn't have that guy that they could turn to. Instead, they just had a bunch of inefficient shooters that didn't show up on any given night, and because of that, Steph Curry moves on to face the Timberwolves in round 2, and the Rockets go to Cancun to enjoy their summer. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think of these Game 7s in the NBA? What do you think could have gone the other way for each of these teams? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NHL. Some craziness going on over there, but round 2 is officially set. We'll talk about each of those round 2 matchups, who I have winning and who I have moving on to the NHL to the NHL Eastern and Western Conference Finals. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over everything you need to know about the NBA playoffs in round 2, what happened in game 7s over the weekend, and what's going on right now between the Celtics and the Knicks. In this segment, we turned our attention over to hockey. Hockey playoffs also reaching stage 2, round 2 in the East and the West. We'll break down all 4 matchups in this segment. Then we'll get into the craziness that was Game 7s, 2 historically crazy Game 7s over the weekend. We'll talk about that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, May 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit of hockey talk here for you, starting off with round 2. There are 4 amazing matchups here in this one. We're going to start off actually in the West Coast. Generally, we start off on the East because of my East Coast bias here, but we're starting on the West. We're going to start off between the Stars and the Jets. The Jets and the Stars, 2 teams that escaped in 7. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Both of them historic comebacks for their own reasons. But this one is going to be a matchup between goaltenders. You have 2 of the best goaltenders in this sport, in Jake Oettinger for the Stars and Connor Hellebuyck for the Jets. Of course, the big story this postseason overall in the NHL has been, for the Jets at least, has been what's going on with Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck last season got the Jets bounced in the first round because of the way that he was playing. He played awful. They ended up losing in round 1. He won the Vezina because of what he did in the regular season. Vezina goes to the best goaltender. Same thing's going to happen this year. He's going to win the Vezina. They barely escaped with their lives because of the way that Connor Hellebuyck was playing. He could not stop a thing on the road, and it looked like in Game 7 it was going to go the same way, especially early on. But he locked in, shut everybody down the stretch, which might give him a little bit of confidence against the Stars here. That's going to be the big X factor. What Hellebuyck do we get? Now, the good thing for the Jets here is that they have home court advantage, home ice advantage for the entire playoffs because they won the President's Trophy. They won the President's Trophy for best record in the league behind MVP and Vezina candidate Connor Hellebuyck, right? These are guys that have performed really well at home. They're undefeated at home in the playoffs, but going up against the Stars versus the Blues, 2 very different levels of competition. The Blues have Jordan Binnington in net, who can step up big, and he has throughout the series. Wasn't enough. You compare him to Jake Oettinger there, I think Oettinger takes the cake at least just a little bit. These 2 teams are going to match up really tight with each other. It's going to be a very physical series because that's the way that the Stars play. The Jets are going to be able to match that energy as any hockey team really can. But the question is, can the Jets' offense step up? Their offense was a little anemic at times, especially on the road. They didn't really get things done until it was do or die third period action, and they had to get things done. The Stars, on the other hand, they have a very, very, very deep team. You go lines 1 to 4 with that Stars team, it's not going to be easy at all. You, of course, have line 1 headlined by Mikko Rantanen and Wyatt Johnson over there, Rupe Hintz as well. This is a really, really great, I should say, Stars team. I just think the way that Hellebucks had played in the postseason is not enough to earn my trust. Despite Game 7, I'm taking the Stars in 5. I think it's just a completely different beast between the Stars and the Jets, right? But between the Stars and the Blues right now, and I don't think the Jets are going to be able to respond. I'm taking the Stars in 5. The other one in the West is going to be really interesting as well. You have the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are the home team in this one. The Golden Knights, of course, came off of a tough series versus the Wild, where they escaped in 6 games in overtime. The Oilers had a crazy series against the Kings, eliminating them for the 4th straight season in round 1. Of course, the Oilers made a run to the finals last year, but they're running into a Knights team that's going to be real tough. The one thing that gives them a little bit of saving grace is Adin Hill. Again, the playoffs is a goaltending game. Goaltender Adin Hill for the Golden Knights had a -5 expected goals allowed average, which means he let in 5 more goals than he was expected to over the course of that series. Now, you can say that's because the Wild offense was really good, which it was, but Adin Hill needs to play better than that. You cannot seriously go through a run with a -5 expected goals allowed average against. It's just not good. You need to be able to step up, especially against the Oilers, who have the scariest line in hockey with McDavid and Draisaitl on one line. You're not going to be able to go easy on them. They're not going to go easy on you. Adin Hill needs to step up. This is not going to be an easy series, but the Knights, they don't have... Their lines aren't too shabby themselves, right? Mark Stone is back and healthy. You have Jack Eichel, who's amazing. You have a very deep Golden Knights squad. They just need to get that goaltending. And the Oilers, they don't really have that goaltending. So this is going to be yet another high-scoring series. It's going to be who can outscore the other team. But I think the Knights' defense is a little better. I think the Oilers' offense is a little better, but I also think the Knights' goaltending is a little better. So I'm taking the Golden Knights in 6 games. But if the Oilers find a way to do it, they've got a nice, easy path to the Stanley Cup Finals. I really do think it's going to be real tight. I'm taking the Knights in 6. Heading over to the Eastern Conference, you have the game that's going on right now. The Maple Leafs take on the Panthers. The Panthers, of course, back-to-back champions out of the East. They've made it to the Stanley Cup Championship game, finals round, I should say, 2 years in a row. They won last year. They're the reigning defending Stanley Cup champions. Sergei Bobrovsky has something to prove after losing out on the Conn Smythe Trophy to Connor McDavid last season. This is a Maple Leafs team that hasn't won since 1967. This is a Maple Leafs team that has been cursed in the playoffs for a very long time. They win a series against the Ottawa Senators. They've made it to round 2. They've made it there a couple of times in the last couple of years. They have not been able to make it past here. The Panthers are playing really good hockey right now. Of course, this is a very physical Panthers team as well. They've got Matthew Tkachuk back. That's going to be a huge get for them. Matthews versus Tkachuk is going to be must-see television, as the Leafs currently up 2-0 right now, which is a little bit shocking to me, especially early on in the series. That should change. This should be a very tight, very physical series again. I just think that the Panthers have enough playoff experience, and the Leafs find a way to choke in a lot of series. I'm taking the Panthers in 6 games. It's going to be a hard-fought 6 games, but I'm still taking the Panthers in 6. And the final series to go over here, the Washington Capitals take on the Carolina Hurricanes. These two teams have been near the top of the Metro all season long. There's a couple of things to look out for. Goalie for the Canes, Freddie Anderson, is injured right now. If he can play, he's going to be huge, but we saw the backup goalie give up 3 goals on 8 shots against the Devils, and that Caps offense is nothing if not deadly. You have Alex Ovechkin, the best goal scorer in the history of the NHL. You have Dylan Strome stepping up huge for them. Tom Wilson, of course, being a dangerous offensive threat, as well as being just a menace on the ice over there. Jacob Chikrin on the defensive side, he's been a sniper all season long. This is just a very deep Capitals team. Again, lines 1 through 4, both of these teams are. It's going to come down to goaltending, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's always going to come down to goaltending. You have Logan Thompson for the Caps, who's coming back from injury, but he was in Vezina conversations for a while. Freddie Anderson also, potentially, if he's back coming off of injury, not necessarily an elite goaltender. Both of these guys can give up goals, but I'm taking the Capitals in this one in 7 games. I love this Canes team, I really do, but they've lost out on a lot of key players, right? They moved off of Martin Necas in a Mikko Rantanen trade, and then they moved off of Mikko Rantanen because it wasn't working out in Carolina. He now plays for the Stars, having that real great offensive engine, despite still having a lot of guys that I think can step up. Sebastian Aho, you still have Taylor Hall. You have a lot of really great guys for the Canes, but I think the Caps just have too much in the tank. They have too many weapons, and I think they're going to be able to get it done in 7, although this should be a really interesting series to watch. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you have winning in each of these NHL Round 2 games? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the comebacks in Game 7. The Jets and the Stars, as we previewed a little bit, had crazy ends to Round 1 in their series. We'll talk about both of them coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over Round 2 in the NHL. 4 great series coming up here. Cannot wait to see how they go. In this segment, we turn our attention to what happened at the end of Round 1. 2 amazing Game 7s as the Stars eliminate the Avs and the Jets eliminate the Blues. We'll talk about both of those, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, May 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into everything you need to know about the craziness that was the Jets and the Stars victories in Game 7. And we're actually going to start off with the Jets here because that one was insane. Of course, we kind of talked a little bit about the whole situation surrounding Connor Hellebuyck in the last segment. Connor Hellebuyck going to win best goalie this year, potentially going to win MVP this season, just became a shell of himself in the playoffs. He could not stop anything. Couldn't stop anything that was coming at him, especially on the road. And it forced a Game 7 against a Blues team that was hungry, had nothing to lose, and that is a dangerous spot to be. It looked like early on in that game that Connor Hellebuyck, playoff Hellebuyck, was going to show up yet again. He had given up 2 quick goals, including a goal on the very first shot he faced early on in the game. It eventually became 3-0. Heading into the third period, the Jets' offense had been completely inept, completely ineffective, although the good news is Hellebuck had kind of locked in a little bit. He had stepped up, especially since the beginning of that first period, and only allowed 1 goal in the next period, in the next 30 minutes of game action. Then everything changed. They get a power play goal, the Jets do, to cut it to 3-1. Another goal later on with less than 4 minutes to go in the game. And then a final goal with not 1, not 2, but 3 seconds remaining on the game clock. That is the latest goal in the history of the playoffs, and it sends it to overtime. In this overtime period, the Jets were playing with gas. They had all of the momentum. They couldn't get it past Binnington. They had a couple of really nice opportunities, a couple of really close calls, one that barely missed going over the goal line and ending it. And we go to 2 overtimes. That is just the 14th Game 7 in the history of the NHL to ever go to double overtime. Connor Hellebuck, of course, was locked in throughout all of this. But at the end of the day, the Jets' counterattack was just way too much for the Blues to deal with. Binnington had a really solid game, but it was just too much. The attack was nonstop. The Blues could never really get a foothold on the offensive side of the ice, and eventually a tip-in overtime number 2 leads to a Jets victory at home in that whiteout stadium. Crowd goes insane. The captain scores a goal to end it for Winnipeg. They advance. A very tumultuous series for them, as it had been basically all series long. Connor Hellebuck needs to step up big, but seeing the way he played at the end of that one gives me, and I think Winnipeg fans, a lot of hope that he could potentially figure it out in round 2. We haven't seen round 2 Hellebuck in a while, so maybe he just need to get the jitters out of round 1. But the other game also was historic in its own right. We saw the Stars advance against the Avalanche in the Mikko Rantanen revenge game. This might go to the top of the list for the best revenge game in the history of revenge games. Name a sport, Game 7 in the playoffs, this might be the top of it. Mikko Rantanen, of course, wanted to spend his career in Colorado. They couldn't agree on a number, so they shipped him off. First, they shipped him off to Carolina, out of the conference, so they wouldn't have to deal with him. That didn't quite work out. People were calling him a Nathan McKinnon merchant because he just wasn't putting up the same numbers. Carolina moves him to the Dallas Stars, where he is fine, basically a point-per-game player, but not that 1.5 point-per-game player that he was when he was with the Colorado Avalanche, and he wasn't really the greatest early on in the series. He had 1 point through 4 games, but then he turned it on, and in this game especially, it was a magical night. It really was. The Stars go down 2-0. Heading into the third period yet again. Sounds a little familiar, right? But then Mikko Rantanen shows up. He gets his first goal, just standard, little bit of a slap shot there. Goal number 2 is one of the most insane shots I have ever seen. On a power play, puck gets dished out near mid-ice. Mikko Rantanen skates it in, gets behind the net, tripped up as he tries to go around the corner. As he is falling on his face, as his legs are on one side of the goal, he somehow guides the puck with his stick face down on the ice through the other side of the goal, around the net there to tie up the game. And what was an incredible shot. I've watched it a million times, and I have no idea how he did it. Wyatt Johnston breaks the tie, a 3-2 lead, but then the real magical moment. With time expiring, Mikko Rantanen puts in an empty net goal for a hat trick to eliminate his former team in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. If that isn't the top of the list for revenge games in the history of revenge games, it can't be any lower than number 3, because that was magical for Mikko Rantanen, I'm sure. He's definitely a little hurt by it. But the Stars find a way to move on, and now they take on the Jets in round 2. Both of these teams who played very hard-fought series going up against each other for the right to make the Western Conference Finals. It should be a really fun series over there. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think about anything that happened in round 1 of the NHL? It has been amazing, as the Stanley Cup playoffs always are. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow, going over everything from around the world of sports. The Celtics and the Knicks currently going at it. We have game 1 between the Nuggets and the Thunder tonight, as well as game 1 between the Maple Leafs and the Panthers at 3-1 after one intermission. I can't wait to talk to you all about that then. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna